1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 testing 1 2.
Hello. Hi, everyone. If you can come make your way, we'll start in a minute or two. And please sit in this section and this section. And down the front, the first row is free as well. So, yeah, we'll start in a minute. Awesome. Welcome, everyone, and good morning. So good to see so many of you here. Welcome for those from the evening service, from the morning service, for people who have never been here before, for friends and family. Thank you so much for coming. This is going to be a great event and already has been. It's been really nice to share a meal together, share drinks together, and we really do hope that this time will be to learn more about the gospel and mental health. For those who are still coming in, please sit in this section and the other section, just so we can group up closer. A few practicalities. The toilets are at the back, and there's only one women's toilet, but you can also use the men's toilet because there's no men here. So there's no congestion. Also, there'll be a break at 11, so if you want to grab something to eat during that time or another drink, you can wait for that moment as well. We are here to gather and educate ourselves and to grow in our knowledge of how God sees mental health. And as I mentioned before, God cares for us holistically. He loves each of us so intimately, and he knows us so deeply, and since we were intricately woven in our wombs, God is so good, and we are here to see how he has shaped how he sees mental health. And it's such a big issue. It always has been. It's not new, but the different challenges do evolve. And we're so blessed to be here to have Nicky Chiswell, who is a professional in psychology, a registered psychologist. It's a huge blessing to have you here, Nicky. Just encourage you to quieten your hearts, be open to be challenged and encouraged during this time. Before we start, I'll pray. Father God, thank you again so much for being with us this morning. Thank you for the lovely meal that we've been able to have and the time of fellowship together. We pray that you would be with Nicky as she speaks with us. God, please give her boldness, give her wisdom, and we pray that you would be teaching us new things through her, and that we just thank you for the ways that you have blessed different people such as Nicky to help us to educate ourselves and to see and to have a better understanding of mental health and psychology. Please bless this time that we have. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks so much. Good morning. It's lovely to be here. This is my old stamping ground. I lived in Clayton for 9 years. Who knows where Stockdale Avenue is? Yes, I lived in 56 Stockdale Avenue for 9 years. Very exciting. My husband worked for the CU and for 12 years actually, and so it's lovely to sort of take my car knew the way. It was great. I now live and work in Hawthorn, and I'm a psychologist, and I do my own private practice with adults now. But for many years I worked in a school, a couple of different schools. Yeah. Hey, so in a group this size, there's going to be people who are really expert at this stuff, more than me, deal with it every day, who work in that area professionally. there'll be people who know absolutely nothing. This is the first thing you've ever sort of had someone explain what depression is or whatever. So, there's that whole spectrum. There's also a spectrum of people who are currently struggling with mental health issues. It's great that you're here. And if while I'm going through some of the symptoms and things that we are looking for to say, look, you probably could do with some assistance, please promise me that if you diagnose yourself, you'll go and get some help. Does that make sense? Like, can I have a little covenant saying, yes, if I see myself in the list, I'll go and get some help. Yeah, good. Good on you, ladies. It's a pleasure to join with you anyway. And we're going to have a really big question time at the end. I think it's really important. If you have something really burning or something you don't understand, you can ask questions during. What we're doing is pretty packed tight. So I want to be finished by 11:45, so that there's lots of time for questions at the end. So do jot your questions down, and then we'll make sure that your question can be heard, and I'll give a shot at answering it, or anyone else that can help. Feel free. Yeah, cool. Let's start. Thanks, Emily. So that's me. That's what I called it. Can we just go back to the first one again? Sorry. Just so you know, it's with a Y. It's the thinking woman's spelling of Nicky, I decided. Are there any other Nickys here who don't spell it like that? Oh, good. Okay, I didn't insult anyone. Okay, let's go. So this is the 4 things we want to do. So get your seatbelts on. This is the 4 things we want to do. In an hour and a half, right, with a break for coffee, right? But it'll be a very short break. And when we say come back, you need to rush back with your coffee because we don't have long. But our goal is to actually know what mental health is and what a mental health problem is, have a sort of bit of an understanding of that, and also have some very practical and clear sort of frameworks for what about when someone is suicidal or not safe, how as a church, how do we look after ourselves if we're that person, but how as a church do we care and walk alongside? What are some really helpful practical frameworks and ways of thinking and things to do that are helpful so that you don't lie awake nights and you're doing what you can to help them be safe. So that's the first half, yeah. And then we'll see how much we get through in the first bit. But then the second half is 5 tips for Christians supporting someone struggling with mental health issues at church. We're going to take quite a bit of time on that because, look, we've got different roles to play. In my role as a psychologist, I do one-on-one work for an hour, sometimes every week, sometimes every 2 weeks, sometimes every month, and that will vary depending on where they're at. And I have a very specific role with that person and a role to play. But as a church, and when I'm at church, I have a completely different role. I am not their counsellor, and I'm not their psychologist, but I'm there to walk alongside and be a voice of love and kindness, but I cannot fix it. But I can be there in a way that I can't. I'm not going to go and have coffee with them. Do you know what I mean? That's against I'm not allowed to do that. Do you know what I mean? Whereas you're providing healthy connectedness, which is one of the key things of mental health. So I'm just one of the things I'll bang on about all morning is be clear on what your job is. Be clear on your role together as a community and what kind of community you want to be when you're struggling, when someone else is struggling. And in my own life, I had a pretty big struggle with depression, anxiety, or I think it was a long-term low-grade anxiety that then ended up with depression when my 2 little boys were just too much for me, particularly the youngest one. Oh my. And I just broke. I was a mess. And I got some really great counselling and went on some medication for 18 months or so. But during that counselling, I had to kind of unearth all this stuff about how I was operating, had to change operating systems. And that I had fantastic counsellors working with me, but I had to re-examine how I saw Grace, how I saw Graham, my husband, how I saw what kind of mum I wanted to be. All that kind of stuff came up. And that sometimes these mental health crises are actually doorways into a new operating system because you've outgrown the old one. And I talk about that a lot in my work. And I just thought I'd share that with you, that I have been a fellow struggler in this. I'm not just I'm not sort of looking at it from afar. And I have to keep an eye on myself, right? When I know my signs, I work really hard at that. I have my own psychologist who I go and see for me still. I go every sort of 6 to 8 weeks to just kind of, I call it my internal hairdo. So, and I just want to encourage you that help really does help. Now, I'm not just being paid to say that, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning to do my job if it didn't work. So if you're hesitant about getting help but you are struggling, let me encourage you as a fellow struggler, it really helps. Yeah. Now, I'm not taking your clients at the moment, but I can give names of people who are, so yeah. Just little plug for go counsellors and psychologists and social workers who do all that, yeah. Okay, let's go. I'll try not to ramble, otherwise we won't get through it. Okay. As Sarah beautifully mentioned in her prayer and in her introduction, humans are complicated, but we are fearfully and wonderfully made, which was what she quoted, we're knit together in our mother's wombs. And that as Christians, we believe that we are created and made beings, and we believe that every breath that comes into our lungs is a gift from God, right? So he knows all about our brains. He's the best brain scientist there is. He invented brains. And he also he made our bodies, and he also wired us to be able to have emotion and thoughts. So one of the helpful ways of thinking about humans as a Christian is that we are psychological beings, we're spiritual beings, and we're physical beings. If you just flip to the next slide. So what I mean is that there's what's under the hood, what's the private experience of the human, the thoughts and the emotions of the human that you can't necessarily see on the outside, though we do express it with our body and faces. There's our body, this thing. Everyone wiggle your fingers. Be aware of the wiggling of your fingers. Yeah, this thing that is a really complicated and amazing thing you just did with your brain. But you have the volition to move your body, and we are embodied, humans are embodied beings. We're not just souls on legs, and we're not just thoughts and emotions. We're embodied. It's how amazingly God has made us. And we're soul and spirit. This is the sort of the seat of our will and our worldview and our desires and stuff like that. Now, back in the day when we had overhead projectors, I would have put 3 things on top of each other so that they were completely changing colour each time. We are not just bits of body and bits of soul. We're intricately all fused together into this complex, 3-dimensional self. Does that make sense? Yeah, sense of being human. It's just really helpful to know that when you think about mental health. Can you go to the next slide, please? Mental health is when you have problems with your thoughts and your emotions, with that internal mental state. Does that make sense? So, no, mental health is when you're going well with that. Mental illness or mental problems are when you've got some troubles with your thoughts and emotions. So when someone says, oh, I've got mental health, I'm going, oh, good for you. Everyone's got health. That's great. I'm glad it's going well for you. No, I've got a mental health problem. Yeah. And so as a psychologist, I just want to... It's not the same as diagnosing the flu or having a blood test to see if you've got COVID or whatever. It's kind of a spectrum where on this end of the spectrum there's mental health where there's occasional to mild distress, but there's no impairment. It's not interrupting our functioning or anything like that. And then we kind of move to this kind of graded, where we've got emotional problems or concerned, and there'll be mild to moderate distress. So we look at the actual distress that's being experienced by the person, but we also look at how are they functioning? Can they get out of bed? Can they hold down a job? Can they look after their kids? Are they eating? Are they managing life? And they're both really important to take notice of, because people can put up with amazing distress but keep going in life, and other people fall at the first hurdle kind of things, you know what I mean, and can't get out of bed, stuff like that. So we kind of look at both those. And then at the end we have sort of fairly serious mental illness where there's marked distress and moderate to disabling or chronic impairment, where they can't actually make life work for them. And look, we don't just kind of land somewhere and stay there our whole lives. We all kind of move up and down. My story would indicate that. I was probably up in the middle towards the brown bit, and then I've moved up to kind of, I'm kind of in the middle. And this whole thing is If you take a snapshot of the population, the whole thing is like a bell curve. So hardly anyone never has any issues. Weirdos. Right, sorry. Official psychological term. And then it sort of rises. Most people have sort of got some kind of struggles or distress or trouble with some things. And then the serious mental illness is not a huge proportion of the population, but it is some. But lots and lots of people are in the middle. Yeah, really important to understand that. Now, next slide, please. But there's also, as well as the mental illness spectrum, right? Like mental health, mental illness. And I'll talk more about that in a minute when we actually look at how we diagnose a mental health problem and why we would do that. There's also just this sense of mental well-being that we all have. We all go up and down on this, right? Yeah. You're just feeling blah and feeling really one day. And then you do some exercise, you eat properly, you have a good sleep, and you feel a bit better the next day, so we go up and down. If we just go to the next slide, I'm kind of mixing those two scales together so that you can know that sometimes when you're feeling blah, down the bottom left here, it's not because you've got a mental health problem. You're not depressed just because you're feeling blah. Does that make sense? Yeah. And we'll look at what the differences are. But I think it's incredibly helpful to know that when, after the pandemic, like I was forever people, we got so many referrals during the pandemic and everything, but you lost all your social contact and your whole life changed and you were grieving, and I was just not able to see my grandchild, and I was just, I felt crap. But it wasn't because I was depressed, it was just a normal, healthy reaction to life circumstance. And so it's really helpful to understand that just because someone's struggling doesn't mean they're depressed, or anxious or got a mental health problem, And there's people who are diagnosed with mental health disorders who are going great. Like, it's well managed, they know how to look after themselves, they're doing great. So it's not, just sort of, I think it's very helpful to be aware of the difference between those. Okay, next slide, please. Now we're going to have a quick, this is where we really do the bus tour of the 3 cities in half a day kind of thing. Yeah, we're going to do that. So buckle up. We're going to go really fast through this bit. But we're going to look at the range of mental health disorders, and what the sort of world of psychology and psychiatry has done is kind of put some lines in the sand along that spectrum of what actually makes something where you need some help. Now, before we label people or talk about labels, I want to tell you the 2 reasons why a label is helpful. One is it engenders self-compassion. Second is you can get the help you need. And the label can kind of go, oh, that makes sense now, I understand. Oh, yeah, it's a thing. And that it can actually, you can often feel worse after you've been given a label, but then you start to sort out what's actually going on. But the label isn't just there to kind of, right, that's it, that's you forever. We move up and down this thing, right? But it was really helpful for me to see that this thing that had gradually been creeping up actually had a name, and that's why I wasn't sleeping, and why I wasn't able to kind of manage stuff, and why I wasn't, it sort of helped me have compassion for myself, but it also made me get treatment and counselling help that helped me. So they're the 2 reasons to have, that's why the labels are there. They're not there to just kind of pigeonhole people, but they help you know what helps. Yeah. Having said that, all the labels are individually expressed into someone's context and stuff, so they're not like cookie cutters where everyone's the same. But there are some patterns that you can recognise, and part of the skill in my work is to sort of really let the individual shine in their uniqueness, while at the same time noticing patterns that might fit with some of these labels, so that we can get help and have compassion. They can have compassion for themselves around what's going on for them. Hope that makes sense? Yeah. Okay, so here we go. This is how it's called the diagnostic and statistical, any psychology people here, yeah, good on you. The DSM, you've probably heard of that, the DSM. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual number 5, I think we're up to. When I was at uni, it was 2, so it shows you how old I am. And that they divided it into these groups. There's mood disorders, which is different kinds of depression. There's anxiety disorders. There's obsessive compulsive disorders, which OCD is a really tough illness to have, a tough thing to have, but it's treatable. There's things you can do to help. There's some very good therapy specifically designed for that out there. There's trauma and stress disorders like PTSD, stuff like that. There's psychotic or thought disorders where you have a bit of a break with reality in the sense that you might have auditory hallucinations or visual hallucinations, or you may have thoughts that are very intrusive that won't go away, which also happens in OCD, but you know, that perhaps the television's talking to me, or that there's people living under my house trying to dob me into the government or something like that, like these kind of, you know, so there's these kind of break with reality. There's personality disorders, which I will talk a little bit about. It's where you sort of really, you either have a fractured sense of self or an overinflated sense of self. It makes it hard for you to connect to the world of others, and a lot of difficulty managing your own emotion and thoughts, and it's a long-term thing. And I'll talk a little bit about them later. Then they have this big sort of garbage bag at the end of, and all the other stuff, which includes developmental disorders like autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, substance abuse, which is very, very common in Australia. It's the second highest mental health disorder is substance abuse. We're big drinkers, not good. And that includes gambling, by the way, as well. And eating disorders, which are very serious, up the extreme sport of psychology, in my view, is eating disorders. You make sure you've got a team if you're working with eating disorders. That's my rule. Yeah, because they're very dangerous. A lot of people die with eating disorders. It's very important to get onto them early, stuff like that. Okay, next slide. So we're going to quickly zip through some of the main ones. Okay, and so this is the main two symptoms of depression that we're looking for. These are the important things that we sort of scan for first, are that you're just depressed and you have a lowered mood and you feel sad, or you feel numb, or you just have a really lowered sense of any emotion, or intense sadness and crying more. And another really important one to notice is when the things that you used to like doing, that used to bring you joy, like hanging out with people, or your sport, or your music, or something, or art, or whatever it was that switched your lights on, it no longer switches your lights on. So we really notice that's a very important symptom to notice, and you've got to have those two going on. But then you've got to have 4 of the following things. Over either 2 to 6 weeks, you've got to have 4 of the following things going on. Listlessness, inertia, and a loss of energy. That can include a real sense of heaviness in your limbs. Like I had that when I was depressed. I had this, my legs felt like lead. So getting up to do the washing up, just everything just felt, couldn't do it. Changes in sleep patterns. Either you're just sleeping all the time and you kind of, or you're on London time, like you're sleeping all day and then, we'll kind of come alive, at night. Fatigue is very common. Concentration difficulties. I remember working with a young person who we were going through a lovely book that listed all these, but with pictures, and he just went, "Oh, is that why I can't concentrate? I thought I was just going stupider." And I went, "No, this is part of the thing, And it's real difficulty with concentration. Changes in eating habits, either just comfort eating a lot or just being right off food and not eating, like either eating too much or not eating enough. And then this is an important one. Dark thoughts of self-harm, suicidal thoughts, not being able to sort of imagine a future for yourself, sort of thinking, what's the point in my existence? Everyone would be better off if I wasn't here. That's a really nasty one. And then feelings of worthlessness and lots of guilt. And I work a lot with Christians, and sometimes we're a bit primed for guilt in our theology and our sometimes different teaching that we've had or whatever, and we need to kind of be really very careful about what's real guilt and what's not, and how to deal with it, because, So they're the kind of list of things you're looking for, and like I say, if you're going tick, 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 please get some help, because help helps. You don't have to, it might have snuck up on you, you might not realise it, yeah? Could you ask that at the end? That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be good. Could you write it down? And then that would be good. Yeah, thank you, because I think it would be helpful then. Yeah. I think it would be good to sort of, what about if it's not that, if they're actually like being by themselves more than they like being with other people? Yeah. Okay, next thing. Anxiety. Okay, everybody has anxiety. It's not a mental health problem. If you don't have anxiety, you would not be sitting here, because you would have been hit by a car a long time ago. You would have, jumped out of a window to see what it was like, because if you're not scared of anything, and if you don't, God has fearfully and wonderfully made our bodies and brains to respond to threat by ramping up our heart rate. So let me tell you a story, and you tell me what was happening in my body, okay? When my boys were young, back in the day where we went to the video store, can anyone even remember what a video store is? Yes, there's a few, about 4. Great, yeah. We went to the video shop in Stanmore in Sydney, which is quite close to the city, and it's a real mixed bag of an area. There's sort of people's few $1 million mansions next to the halfway house from prison, and there's lots of social housing as well as amazing, it's very mixed bag socioeconomically. I loved it. I loved living there. It was, and we were in the video shop, and some masked men came in with knives, and Graham and I were standing at the counter paying for our video, and they came up to me like this and put the knife at my throat and said, "Give me all your money." Okay, it's got a happy ending, so don't worry. The happy ending was given away to me by the fact that the guy behind the counter went, "Not again." You know what I mean? They were just desperate druggies, did it every couple of weeks, and he'd just put $1,800 in the unlockable safe that he didn't know how to open, so he was just like, "You're going to get about $20, but guys, sorry, try again next time," kind of thing. So that just so that you're not getting triggered by the story, it all was great. But what do you think actually happened to my body in that moment? Yep, kind of a bit rigid. Yep, you can freeze. Yep. What other things would have been happening physiologically for me? Rapid heartbeat. Well done. She demonstrated it for us. Yeah, I was like, bah, 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 bah. Like if you put a little thing on me, I would have been, 180, 200, something like that. It was full on. I was very proud of myself spiritually. I turned around and protected my children. I went, "Oh, Jesus, please protect everyone here today." And I was praying very loudly, and I thought, that's really great that was my panic response. I was quite proud of that. Thank you, Lord, you are at work in me. So, yes, anything else? So we've got the sort of frozen heart rate. What will be happening to my breathing? Elevated breathing rate, and also shallow. This is, when you breathe like that, you're sending your brain a message to say there is a threat. It sent you a message saying there's a threat, and you respond in kind, which is why breathing is really important treatment for anxiety, because it's sending a message to your brain that the threat has gone. So it's not just hippy-dippy Eastern stuff, it's being a human being, is actually learning how to breathe well, deeply and slowly, and filling up your tummy like a balloon. All you singers and brass players and flute players, filling up your tummy like a balloon and breathing really slowly, getting it down to sort of 10 breaths a minute at the most. That calms us. It helps reverse all those things. You can lower your own heart rate. The other thing is, the part of the freeze thing is muscle tension. So you can kind of consciously and unstick your brain from that. Okay, so it's a wonderful, functional, normal and healthy response to a perceived threat, because it enables you to run away, it enables you to fight, it enables you to try and fix what the problem is, or it also enables you to sometimes freeze is the most, in trauma responses, freeze where you cannot get away from the threat, freeze is the sort of most dramatic response, and sometimes it's called flop and drop as well, like where people just kind of faint or collapse. That's in really extreme trauma. People just it's a kind of a defence mechanism that our body and mind that God has fearfully and wonderfully made in us. So if you have anxiety, good, it means you're breathing, you're alive, you're a human. An anxiety disorder, on the other hand, if you could go to the next slide, is when the response is not proportional to the threat. I think I was allowed to have a really fast heart rate when this masked man was holding a knife to my throat. I think that wasn't an anxiety disorder. But if I was having that response, if my body's learnt to have that response when, I can't find a shoe, or I don't know, when there is no threat at all, but I just suddenly find I'm having this response. That's when our anxiety systems have got out of touch with sort of, where our body's learnt to respond and it's got this learned response in a way that's not necessarily helpful. And I talk about it like a smoke alarm going off without a fire, So it's like our body and mind have a smoke alarm, and this is when we have anxiety disorder, is when there isn't a threat or when the threat is absolutely tiny. And generalised anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, panic disorder, phobia disorders, they are all different kinds of anxiety disorder. So you might be having a problem with you're having this threat response when you have to go and be with people, which, that's not great. We're designed to be social beings. Perhaps you've got some social anxiety there. Or panic disorder is when that anxiety response gets right out of control and the heart rate is so bad that you're actually having chest pains and your breathing's out of control and you're crying like something terrible's happened, but it's not actually, and you don't know why it's happening. And people turn up at hospital in the ED thinking they're having a heart attack and they're actually having a panic attack. Yeah. And phobia disorders is when you actually have that response or have that anxiety response to something that's not a threat at all, like balloons or a banana or something like that. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to have to race along here. And just have a think for a minute. In response to a perceived threat, there are 4 main modes. Fight, flight, fix, or freeze. I mentioned those before. And which one do you have as your default position? Just think about when you get anxious. Do you get like, rah, rah, or do you get and withdraw, run away? Or do you get kind of, right, I'm going to start doing everyone's job for them and I'm going to fix that. I'm going to kind of get really sort of over-functioning, if you know what I mean. She's nodding. Or do you just kind of become paralysed? So you guys know each other, right? Why don't we put our hands up and I'll go through them each. Have a little think. You don't have to put your hand up if that's not helpful for you, but it'd be fun to see whose is which, right? And then you'll look and go, that explains a lot. So, okay, fight. Who's a fighter? Go you. Yep. Good on you, ladies. You kind of find yourself shouting or whatever. Yeah, that's good. Who's a flight? Run away. Oh, me too. Yeah. Run away. Yes. I want to avoid. Yeah. You and me both. Fix. Who finds themselves just sort of over-functioning, doing more and more, trying to be more and more organised, trying to kind of, and you start doing other people's jobs for them, and you start trying to control other people, and okay, you get it, right? You got a lot of fixers in this congregation. Stuff's going to get done around here. That's why the breakfast was so great, right? And who finds themselves just becoming paralysed when there's conflict or a problem? Look, so good to notice. That's really good to notice. Yeah, good noticing, people. Well done. Okay, next one. I'm going to race through this next bit. Personality disorders. I'm just going to give you a minute to read that. Oh, sorry, thank you. It's really important in churches to sort of have a little bit of an understanding that when you see that there is a kind of a trail of destruction, like every small group that person's been in has been blown up by some kind of thing, or where there's repeated threats of suicide or something like that, but it's you have this sense that nothing's ever enough, that kind of stuff. It's just really helpful to know that it could be a personality disorder, and that's a long-term struggle with a sense of self. And there's a beautiful website called reachout.com that has a lovely description of borderline personality disorder that's very respectful. And most of all, I think it's really important that people have developed these ways of surviving for all sorts of reasons, and they don't choose to be like this. So to sort of develop compassion towards them at the same time having boundaries is very helpful, and we'll talk about that later. It's sort of over 6 months when you notice, or 6 months to 2 years, you kind of notice that there's this little trail of blow-ups with the same person at the middle of it all. You kind of, because when I worked in schools, right, we could see it in the year 9. There it was, and then best buddies, do everything together, love each other. Next day, calling the police because they're having a cat fight. Do you know what I mean? Like really interesting, sort of lots of extremes and big feelings that are very difficult for them to manage. And then within that, there are people who have insight that they've got this issue, and there are people who it's always everybody else's fault, and they don't do so well because they don't get help, if that makes sense, because they don't have a problem. It's their fault. It's their fault. And that lack of insight is very hard. Yeah, I feel for people with that. Okay, next one. Now, this is my favourite bit. The whole mental health thing has just been revolutionised in the last 10, 20 years, right? Because guess what? We're embodied beings, and how much you exercise is directly proportional. It's the number one treatment for anxiety is half an hour, 120 beats per minute, 5 to 6 days a week. Okay, 120 beats per minute. For me, that's a jog. I try to walk at 120 beats per minute. I just have to break into my Nana jog that I do. I have to break into that. But it's a treatment for anxiety. It's the number one treatment for anxiety and depression is exercise. The exception to that is if you have chronic fatigue syndrome, you need an exercise physiologist to guide you with that. But a lot of our depression and anxiety is because we're not moving our bodies, and the second thing is we're not feeding our bodies what they need to be eating. Deakin University has the biggest, most fantastic study in the world on nutrition and mental health. They're part of this worldwide thing, and they're Felice Jacka. I don't know if you can Google her. She's got these amazing talks. And we've got to eat what's from a farm, not a factory. We've got to eat big, wide range of vegetables. And ladies, we need to be eating a little bit of red meat 3 to 4 times a week. And Felice Jacka was a vegetarian before she did her own study, and she put it up on the wall and she went, I now eat kangaroo because I know it's humanely culled. And I know, but there's particular fatty acids in red meat alone you can't get anywhere else, and there's direct relationships. So I make and as well as iron levels. The overlap with iron deficiency and depression is very huge, and I've tried to counsel anemia, and it doesn't work because you need. So I send everyone off, go and get a blood test, see what your vitamin D levels are, your B12 levels, and your iron levels. Then we'll talk. You know what I mean? So can't emphasise this enough. Lower carbs, but not no carbs. You need all the fibre to make the serotonin. The tummy's now called the second brain because this microbiome thing is a really big deal for mental health because 90% of our serotonin, which is the well-being neurotransmitter in our brain, it's metabolised and made in the gut, with all those trillions and trillions of microbacteria and all that. So it's very important that we eat enough fibre. And lots of different kinds of vegetables is very important. Sleep. This is just huge. Those of you who've had little children, you know that no sleep means the world goes grey and you don't know what's going to happen. So having really good sleep hygiene. I've started putting my alarm on at 9 o'clock at night to say I need my wind down time where there's no screens, whatever, and I'm going to get up at 7 o'clock every day. I'm trying to really work on that at the moment to get back into that going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time, plus exercise and diet helps your sleeping as well. So they're all we are embodied beings, right? You need better sleep. Social connection is just huge. It's really, really huge. And for people struggling with mental health issues, it's great that you're part of a church. We need each other. Your church is providing one of the healthiest things that you can have social connection. And also learning how to switch off and relax, how to actually, how to chill, how to learn how to breathe deeply, how to, working out what is rest for me. Because watching Netflix probably isn't it, sadly. Depressing, right? But there's stimulating and, and it feels like you've stopped moving, but it might not actually be restful. Perhaps more likely it's to be getting out in nature, being able to see blue sky or grey sky, being able to see green, apparently is very helpful, being able to see green or blue. So working out what is actually restful for me, going for a walk, chatting with my friend on the phone, but what is restful for me? It's a really helpful exercise to write down what are 5 things that are actually restful for me, rather than just distracting me, if that makes sense. Yeah, Facebook's not going to do it for you. I would encourage you, particularly if you're struggling with the sleep thing and social media, there's these social media blockers that you can get where you get a mate to put the pin in, and you can't, and you can say, I'm going to have half an hour a day, but then no more, and it won't let you into your own phone. To do YouTube, you can nominate YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is. It's very, very helpful. I do recommend that. Okay, next. Now this is the really important bit, so you might want to have a little like this, and I'm going to race through the what to do when someone's not feeling great or you're really worried about someone's safety, okay? So maybe stand up, turn around, sit down, take a big breath. Yeah. And we will have a little break after this. Okay. So are we ready to talk about the next topic? Just write down your questions if you've got them, and we can do them at the end. That'd be great. If you are in a situation where you feel like someone is in imminent danger of self-harm, of killing themselves or of hurting themselves, you need to know that there are Ghostbusters out there. Who are you going to call? Psychiatric triage. That's right. Who are you going to call? Psychiatric triage. They are trained to assess risk on the phone. They are amazing. And I looked up the Monash psychiatric triage. It has to go to the hospital near where people live, but I think a Monash is going to be most of you guys. Write this number down, people. 1300 369 012. 1300 369 012. They're a 24/7 line called the Crisis Assessment Team, so they're called the CAT team. Monash Crisis Assessment Team. They do psychiatric triage and they can do it on the phone. Now, I had a situation where I had someone in my small group who was very unwell. I suspected borderline personality disorder, but he was quite grumpy, stormed out, said he was going to kill himself, walked out, and I figured we've worked out he was probably walking to Yarraman Station because I was living in Dandenong at that point. And I rang the psychiatric assessment team, and they'd already got his name. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the other thing is that, if this has happened before, oh, yep, we know him, yep, okay, look, we'll now call the cops. They'll go find him and they'll bring him, whatever. Do you know what I mean? But before that, I had to ring a couple of times before about him, and they would talk to him on the phone, or they'd say, oh yeah, we've got his number, we'll call him and see if we can getting some help, kind of thing. So they, and also in my small group, right, at the time, there was me and a psychiatrist, and we said, we're trying to do this, and we're trying to do that. He goes, can I just say, when you're not at work, you're not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and when you're not at work, and you are not trained to assess risk in your life, you're trained to assess it at work, and we're trained to assess it over the phone. I went, that's fantastic, thank you. I just get to be Joe Blow. I wasn't trying to fix it or do anything. I called the people who are expert at this. They're there, they're wonderful. That's if you're really kind of concerned about someone's imminent danger, okay? You can call the cops, call an ambulance. The cops can get people to go into an ambulance if they don't want to. So that's why you need the cops, if that makes sense. Yeah. Or if someone has insight and said, I'm really unwell and I need to go and get some help, you can drive them to your local ED, emergency department, and they have people ready to do intake with them and assess what's going to be helpful. And keep telling them that help helps. They don't have to feel like this forever. Next slide, please. Or when you're concerned for someone's safety, it's not imminent, but you're just like, this person's pretty not great. And these are just some really helpful questions for you to ask. We will send, I think somebody will send you these slides later, so you don't have to sort of jot it all down. But it's just a really helpful little framework that is good. It's okay to ask, have you thought about hurting yourself or ending your life? It is okay to ask because you want to know what you're dealing with here. And you can say, look, I'm not going to be shocked or anything, but I'm just wondering if the dark thoughts got so dark, which is one of the things that I ask in my work. Have the dark thoughts got so dark that sometimes you just are wondering whether you're going to end it or anything like that, if you've thought about self-harm, anything like that. And if you show that you're not going to be shocked by the answer, they'll tell you. You know, that someone's interested, someone's paying attention. And then I say, look, I do encourage people in my work, but you can also do it with friends to say, listen, here's the number. Now, this is the number that I give everybody. It's 131114. It's Lifeline. They are also great. So write that one down as well. You know, if you're ever feeling like this and you're worried that you're going to do something and you can't keep yourself safe, call Lifeline, 131114. They are excellent at helping people work out what they need to do next. And they're there 24/7. Yep. And you can say, so have Lifeline, have the psychiatric triage number, and they might even say, why don't you just call that friend and talk about something else rather than your mind drilling a hole deeper and deeper into something. You know, have some things they can do. Have 5 things they can do instead when feeling like it's all going downhill. Get up, throw some paint on a bit of paper and make a picture of what you're feeling, or just make a picture. Go for a walk, go and hug a tree. I get them to come up with 5 things that they would do, and we draw their hand, and you know, you can tell I work in schools, right? You draw their hand and go, what's 5 things I can do? So that when you're in the moment and your mind's just run away with you and these dark thoughts have run away with you, you can sort of come back into your body and go, what can I do with my body right now? I could go and cook something. I could go and play the piano. I could go and ring that person, or I could, do you know what I mean? So that's what I tend to do is, it's there. You can't fix it, you can't make it go away, but you can make sure they've got the numbers they need to ring if they think they can't keep themselves safe. But you can also suggest some other things, and instill hope. Even with really suicidal people, there's a percentage of them that wants to stay alive. And you can say, well done for making it this far, good on you. And I do percentages with people and go, how can we get this up to this next 10% or whatever? But look, notice this percentage that wants to stay here. There's really important, there's people who love you. You would devastate people if you did this. Do you know what I mean? You know, some people keep them, these protective factors that are keeping them alive are very important. And talk about the future and who would miss them, and ask what are their protective factors, like what are some good things. I know this is feeling so rubbish right now, but you don't have to feel like this forever. What are some good things that you want to stay around for, kind of thing. Now, you don't have to do therapy with people, and some of this may not be appropriate depending on your relationship with someone, but if you're really close to them, these may be helpful things to do. But also, if you're walking alongside with someone and you think the safety factors are very considerable, make sure you're getting some support. You need to tell someone, you need to tell someone who can walk with you and supporting you. How's that going? How are you feeling about it? Does that make sense? Next slide, please. Now, with my friend that I was telling you about before, who was moving in and out of suicidality pretty regularly, he was pretty rubbish at getting help. And I just became a cracked record. And that his I'm going to kill myself was a way of trying to draw me in to try and fix things for him. And I cared about him. He didn't choose to be like this. There's all sorts of reasons he was like this. And I just became a cracked record. I'd say, listen, mate, you really need help. And I can't help you with these feelings that you're having. But there are people who can help you with these awful feelings. And I said to him eventually, every time you tell me this, I am going to tell you the same thing. Here's numbers you can ring, And you really need somebody who can help you with these feelings. I can be with you, I can make tea for you, but I can't fix these feelings for you. You need somebody who's going to be able to assist you. And eventually he kind of like, I'm so sorry that you're feeling so bad. I can't help you change these, but there's expert help available. Can I help you get in touch? And being a bridge to the help they need can be your job. Is that clear? And also, I'll say, listen, I'm really not comfortable with your level of I need to sleep at night, and I'm not happy with the level of risk. I'm going to get some help for me about this. I'll say that too. Hope that's helpful. Yeah. What's the next slide say? Oh, okay, we can have our little break now. I know we rushed through that a bit, but you've done well. You happy to have your little break now, and then we'll come back? Yep. But it'll only be like 10 minutes at the most so that we can get through the next thing. So go to the loo, get something, whatever you need, and then I'll start back at 10 minutes' time, just after 10 past. Yep. Hi everyone, we want to get back now please. That'd be great. If you could come back and take a seat. Sorry, you can have a coffee at the end if you're still waiting for a coffee, but come and have a seat. Hey, Sarah, do you want to educate and get those people to come and sit down? I'd like to start again if that's okay. Thanks, guys. Good, you've got some sugar and caffeine floating around. Good. Well, be better if it was red meat and vegetables, right? Yes. Okay. Little 5 tips alongside a friend or a family member who is struggling with a mental health issue. And then we'll have 5 tips for people who are struggling with a mental health issue. That makes sense. So you understand the difference? Yes. Some of them are the same. And look, we'll look at the first one. That's the summary, but we'll look at the first one. If you could go to the next slide. Thanks. Have a good theology of suffering. Like, I figured you, women being at Regen, you'd probably like a bit of theology. I have to credit my husband Graham with the Tough Times Triangle. Anyone who's ever done anything with Graham knows that he loves triangles. And the idea of a theological triangle is that there are 3 important facts or truths that we want to hold together, and sometimes they feel in tension with each other. But if you leave one out, you end up unbalanced in your understanding of a complex thing. So let me explain. So there's 3 sides to the Tough Times Triangle, and all 3 sides are out of Romans 8. So you could have a fun Bible study looking at the 3 sides and seeing where it comes out of Romans 8. The first thing is that we are a part of a groaning creation. I just come across people all the time who think that if I love God enough and that I'm a Christian and Jesus has helped me in the past, why is this hard now? And I call it, like there must be something wrong with me or something wrong with God because this isn't working. I followed, I'm doing all the right Christian things, but life's harder than I'm wanting it to be. Does that make sense? And they forget this part of the triangle. I call it emotional prosperity doctrine, actually, where you think if you're really following Jesus closely, then you're just going to float Zen-like above all difficulties. So wrong. Read the Bible for 5 minutes. Jesus went through it, the valley of the shadow, like Job, Jesus, the psalmists. More than half the Psalms are, crying out to God, why is this so hard? Like, what's going on? What are you doing, God? Lord, this hurts, This is the real, normal Christian experience. Because, as Romans 8 explains, we're part of a groaning creation. We're not there yet. And knowing Jesus is really important. And Psalm 23 is really important but he's with you in the dark place, you're not going to have to go through the dark place. That makes sense. Really great book called God on Mute by Pete Greig for those who are struggling with their faith in hard times and thinking, well, what is God doing? Really great. If you go onto the 24/7 Prayer International website, there's a lovely little talk that he gives about it as well, just at the places of dark. There's no trite answers, no crap. It's really good. I'm a bit of a fan of that book. All his stuff I enjoy. Anyway, his name's Pete Greig. It's very good. Next side of the triangle is that, look, God is sovereign and good, and we know this, that he's in charge of all circumstances. He's aware of what's going on, and he's in control of it all. And that, it's very important to hold on to that when times are really tough and to sort of have those 2 things together. That, yes, this is a hard time, I'm really struggling, but times are tough. But God is actually in control of all this. God knows, and He's actually here. Somehow my Siri's decided to start talking to me. But then it's more than that. I think I went through a long time of actually forgetting the third one, which is that we have a Heavenly Father who loves you. And this is personal. I think I felt a lot like a cog in a ministry machine for a number of years. And that I'm just trying to build the kingdom, do my thing, and gradually ground to a halt with exhaustion instead of actually having a vibrant, alive, one-on-one relationship with my Heavenly Father and doing life with Him in good times and in bad times, rather than just doing it for Him, if that makes sense. Yeah. And for people in ministry, this is really important. Like, it's important for all of us, right? But for people in ministry, it's very hard to go the long haul if you don't have a secure attachment and understanding of God the Father and how He sees you and how you see the Father safely. There's some really good research around that. It's very important. Hard to go the long haul in ministry if you're not having this sense of God being your Heavenly Father. He knows your name and He loves you, and He is with you in the valley. But you can see these three things held together are really important. Yes, He's in control. Yes, He cares, and He cares about you individually. But we are in a groaning creation, and we cry out. And, Romans 8 talks about, that groans too deep for words. The Spirit's even in us, helping us pray, and He's groaning too deep for words. The Spirit's groaning. If it's good enough for the Spirit, it's good enough for us, right? Yeah, that's my theory. So before we sort of talk about, walking alongside someone, it's really helpful to have this kind of understanding of tough times and struggle in this world, rather than how to get my goat up, like how to get me angry, is to say, yeah, but if you really trusted God, you wouldn't feel like this. Give me their address. I will turn up with a shotgun. Honestly. Sorry, this is live stream. That's really unhelpful. Don't tell that to... But it just makes me so cross. I get so cross. I've seen dear ones of mine hurt so badly by Christians who forgot the bottom part of the triangle. No, this is one of the dark, difficult things that on planet Earth in this season between the first coming of Jesus and the second coming of Jesus, it's hard. And we were told it would be hard, but He said, I will never leave you or forsake you. Yeah. So preach it. Yeah. So thank you. I love the bit of Baptist, bit of charismatic. Love it. It's great. Yes, so please have this straight before you walk alongside someone who's suffering, or you could brandish Romans 8:28 like a weapon. That is not helpful. Just suck it up, you'll be fine. No, it hurts. I've just written a song about trying to be with someone in suffering. And one of the verses is, if I was one of Job's friends, what should I have said? Maybe just tears in my eyes and shake my head. And don't you let anyone give you slick answers why. Just let now be now and let our silence reach the sky. Yeah. So, how to be with someone when they're suffering is a really important skill to cultivate. Yeah. But it's really important to notice what's happening for you, and we'll get to that a bit later. But sometimes the reason we want to fix is we want to fix it. We don't want them to be there because it's hard for us to tolerate their suffering. So it actually becomes about you. Totally been there, totally done that, totally understand that. But develop a self-awareness when you're walking alongside in suffering that understands, why do you feel this compulsion to fix? It's because you're anxious. It's one of your anxiety responses, as it is mine. Okay? So there's a lot of fixes here. I saw your hands go up before. Yeah. So just really good self-awareness, sort of noticing. Okay. But I hope that's helpful theology for you. I find it really helpful to kind of keep all those things together. And have wisdom and clarity about team and shared care. There's this beautiful bit in the story about Martha and Mary that I was looking at this week with a bunch of people. And Martha goes up to Jesus and says, don't you care that I'm doing all the serving on my own, all alone? She uses the word alone. Go and tell her to help me. It's so interesting. I think it's like a red flag to the bull when you think everything, a red flag is to sort of, okay, there's something not right here about how I'm doing this. If you have that sense of, oh, it's all up to me, it's all on me, there's something not right there. And we need to have some wisdom, or if we're walking alongside someone and we think it's our job to keep them alive and it's all up to us, you're on thin ice. That makes sense. And that as a church, we can have shared care. In that more extreme example that I used of our friend before, we actually had a little team. I'll call him James, Team James. We had a little Team James, and we'd kind of take it in turns to help with things. He'd try and play us off against each other or whatever, and we go, no, we're on your team, mate. We're just on your team. Do you know what I mean? But then, how are you going with this? If you ask for money, this is who's going to look after that. If you ask for this is who's going to look after that. But we've all got the same plan. You give him the numbers if he says the suicide line. Do you know what I mean? Like, not to push him away, but to say we care about you, we want you alive. But we can't help you with that. But we can help you with these things. You know what I mean? That makes sense. So have a sense of, sorry about that. That was another seminar I did for a bunch of supervisors. So we'll forget the bottom one. Oh no, we will talk about 2 helpful concepts to ponder and 4 helpful questions to ask, but I don't have the resource here. So remember, and also if someone's really struggling, remember it's not just one thing. It's not just, they've got a mental health problem. It's like, no, they've probably might have broken up with someone, or there's grief from other things, or they've just been working too hard, or they're not sleeping great, or, it's just, we're all complicated. It's not just, you've got depression, let's quick. There's that Albert Maslow quote of if all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I think it's a really helpful quote. No, we're complicated. We're messier than that. And just walking alongside as whole humans, bumbling along together. We can't fix it. We can't do everything, but we can be present and we can have a voice. And we may be able to have some boundaries around that. We can't be present at 3 o'clock in the morning because we need our sleep. So we make sure our phone's on silent. So listen, I will read 1 text a week from you. I'm not going to read 12 texts a day or 12 texts an hour. Just so you know, it's not helping me. I find it too hard to keep like this, so having some boundaries around that, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we can't do everything, but we can be present and we can have a voice. We can speak and wisely or be silent if needed. Yeah. Next one. And this is the next bit, is know your own role and boundaries. Let me just, I think this is very important, and I mentioned before, there's a couple of frameworks that I use that I find very helpful. If you're walking alongside someone at church and you're really finding that there's this sort of manipulative side coming in and they're threatening suicide to try and get your attention, or if you feel like you're being a bit used, or you feel like, like we had someone at our church who, I can't possibly do my own grocery shopping. You're going to have to do it. No one loves me because no one's doing my grocery shopping. And yeah, maybe not. It's sort of tricky. Make clear, there's what I call is the pincher movement. This is one of the concepts that I find helpful. Is that with people who you're feeling like they're playing a bit of game, or that they're sort of using their not being well to kind of make control or manage you and get your presence or make you do more than you feel able to do, have you done 2 things? And we call it the pincher movement. We came up with this when I worked in schools. So let them know your positive regard and that you care about them and you love them. Have you done that? And have you made very clear to them the other side of the pincher? And because we call it pincher in that it kind of works together to contain and manage and hold. So the other side of it is, have you made very clear to them, have you made absolutely crystal clear to them what is okay to do and what is not okay to do? So at school, for example, we wrote a really long list with a young girl and we said, it's not okay for you to disrupt a lesson or to leave the classroom, run into the toilets and text people that you're going to end it or whatever. That's not okay. As soon as you do that, we either ring the police or we go home. We're not having that. Similarly, if you've got someone who disrupts church, it's actually illegal to disrupt a religious gathering. You just call the cops. Do you know what I mean? Like, just make really clear. But it's often helpful when someone's sort of calm to say, these are the things that are okay here and these are the things. Or in our small group, you may not use rude words and we don't say negative things about each other in our small group. We have it written down Do you know what I mean? This is our code of conduct kind of thing. They're making really clear what's okay and what's not. Or even, hey, I'm really happy for you to text me once a week. Not happy for you to text me 12 times in an hour. So work out when you'd like to text me, and I'm going to read it on Thursday afternoon at around 2. If I don't respond to then, it's because that's when I read your text. Does that make sense? Yeah, just sort of being really clear what you can and can't do. But so it's also what they can and can't do, but what you can and can't do, but also what you will and won't do. I don't know if that sounds too complicated. Be clear on what you can offer and what you would like to offer. Not what you can offer, but what you will offer. You know, our capacity changes at different times of life, and, you know, there may be times where you walk really intensely with someone, but you can't sustain that. You know, you're concerned about burnout, you know, that kind of stuff. So just be clear, not in a I'm only prepared to do this kind of way, but just, you know, be sort of compassion and kindness. I didn't choose to be doing this, but to say, no, I can do this. Would that help? Once every fortnight, I will bring round a meat pie and drop it on your doorstep. How about that? I can do that. I can manage that. Do you know what I mean? And then Jane said she'd do it the other week. So, you know, there's a meal or there's a dinner a week you don't have to think about. That's great, isn't it? You know, whatever it is. But think about wisdom of team shared care, knowing your own roles and boundaries. And the other thing is, if somebody says to you, oh, I'm thinking of ending it, but don't tell anybody, you just go, nah, all bets are off. If you're not safe, I'm not safe holding that secret. And I've got to protect myself here. If you're not safe, these are the things that need to happen. You know, I have people who support me, and I'm going to tell them, and they're going to ask me how I'm going with this. But also, I'm going to ask you, have you rung that number? Can I help you? Can I go to the GP with you to talk about this? GPs are amazing. They know what to do. Like, can I book an appointment? Can I help you book an appointment to the GP? Here you go. We're all responsible in the end for our own emotional well-being. We can't fix each other's, but you can walk alongside and be present. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. And empathy this is one that I have to really work on in my own work and in my own personal work as well. Empathy is important, but over-empathy is not helpful for you or others. It's a bit of the fix control thing. But also, if you have big feelings like me, you tend to sort of feel other people's feelings for them. You're like, oh, you know, and then you think, well, if it's happening to me, then I better fix it. Whereas it's not happening to you, darling. It's just not. It's their journey, and you get to be present and be a voice in a boundaried way, and that's helpful. So we've got the two concepts of the pincher movement. There's another concept. So the pincher movement is have I shown love and concern and care? Have I been very clear about what is and is not okay in terms of their behaviour, and what I will and won't do? Have I been clear? So that's the other side of that. Another concept that's very helpful is I like to... I don't think I've got time to go through it. Yeah, I think we'll skip that. That'll do for now. Oh, yeah. Let go. I guess we'll just quickly look at the bottom one. What you can control and what you can't control is a very helpful concept. We use that as the other concept. Even just writing a list, what can I do something about here? What can I not do anything about here? I cannot change their feelings. I can't stop those thoughts coming into their head. You know, even writing it down, I find that very clarifying, very helpful. You can also do what am I doing and what am I not doing and make a grid out of it, and that's a lot of fun because you kind of realise, actually, I'm ruminating a lot about something that I cannot control. That's not helpful. How could I get into I can't control it, so I'm doing nothing about it? How can I get into that surrender and handing it over to God square? Or I could do something about that, but I'm procrastinating. You know what I mean? Okay, yeah. So working out what you can control, what you can't control, what you are doing and what you're not doing. It's a fun grid. Call it the control grid. Really helpful exercise. But I've got to rush on so that we can have our questions soon. Yeah, and I just want to do a little reflection exercise with you. We talked a little bit about what your default mode is, and I've got another few that I'd love you to sort of think about. Let me just show it. You know. Okay, so when you're walking alongside someone, it's really good it's really good. This is a good lesson for life anyway, for everything. But I'm a big believer in stop. Notice what's happening for you. So this is a reflection exercise when we're not on there at the moment. Okay, so just sort of thinking about stop. what's happening for you? And you can ask the question, how am I responding to this person and to their situation? That's a really helpful question. How am I responding to this person and this situation? What thoughts keep going through my head about it? Look, am I really getting stuck thinking about them all the time or worrying about them? And what am I doing about it? And then the next thing is, what's your default position? We looked at your default position in response to anxiety, and this is very similar, but are you someone who is a really strong empathizer and you feel yourself feeling their feelings for them? Is anyone like that here? Or am I the only one? Well, there we go, ladies. Yeah, it's a big lot of you. Got to look after ourselves in this. Notice that you're feeling those feelings for them. It's okay that you do that, but they don't have to drive your behaviour. You can say, oh, gosh, I really feel that for them, but it's not going to make me try to fix it or try to get rid of my feeling by, oh, feel better. Stop being anxious. Do you know what I mean? That doesn't help. Yeah. That make sense? Yeah. But because you've got to notice what's happening for you. So if you're a strong empathizer like me, just notice what's happening for you, but don't let that run your actual behaviour. Think, have I shown them care and concern? What can I, or what will I do now? What won't I do now? What can I do something about? What can't I do something about? Just sort of get clear. Are you a Mr. and Mrs. Fix-It, giving advice and directing solutions? Are you who's one of those? You one of those? Yeah, good on you. Yeah, we need you in the world. Don't worry. It's really important. The jobs you do are probably because you're good at that. However, notice, is it because you're anxious or because you can't stand the mess? Like, we've got to live with mess. We're in a fallen world. We can't fix their feelings. Yeah. Some people try to find a reason or cause to blame, like, well, it's their fault. They're not doing what they should be doing, and getting grumpy, which is a bit of a fight response. It's all still about you wanting them to be different. You can't control that. You've got to let that go. Do you feel helpless and sort of join them in this helpless, feeling overwhelmed and sort of drowning in their problem? Sort of wake up and say, no, this is not my problem. This is their journey. It's not my journey. I can pray for them, but I can't do it for them. Yeah, that's really important. Do you find yourself getting frustrated and angry? A bit of a fight response? Or are you scared that you might make it worse, so you just run away and avoid? All of those things. It's just good to have that self-awareness. Okay, so if you're someone who does struggle with mental health issues, as I have been, here's some... it is really helpful. Sorry, just back to the previous slide. Asking yourself, what's your capacity, generally, but at the moment, and say, look, I'm just full. I've got a lot going on in my life at the moment, really good things. So I just can't do a lot more than I'm already doing. I'm having to say no to a lot of things. And that is self-care and taking responsibility for myself. It's not selfish, if that makes sense. Yeah. And take responsibility for yourself because it's your journey. And you can't help, But you can pray for them or say, oh, but I could link you up with someone who's really good at this and would like to make dinner for you or whatever. Yeah. Hope that makes sense. And who's looking after you? Who are the people that you are getting support from as you walk alongside? Okay, hope that makes sense. Let's rush through the next bit before we have our questions. Same one as the first one. So if you're someone like me who has had struggles with mental health issues or are currently really struggling with mental health issues, have a good theology of suffering and don't fall for the idea that Christians are supposed to feel positive and victorious all the time. Amen, sisters? Amen. Thank you. That felt good. Okay, next one. Don't always trust your feelings about how God sees you. Peter Adam is a wonderful elder Christian statesman in our city, and you probably know him. He used to be the head of Ridley College, and he's the wisest, deepest, most profound pastor, and he has struggled with depression many decades. And he just says in his beautiful, deep voice, he goes, I don't know how you think about you, but I know exactly how God feels about you. Let me tell you. And not to confuse us, this is really beautiful, isn't it? I don't know how you feel about you, or even how you think God feels about you, but I know how God feels about you. Look. Well, I know how God feels about you. And that when our mind's not going well and our thoughts and emotions are all mixed up and we're struggling with guilt and all sorts of things because we're not very well, we need to know that we can't always trust our feelings about how God sees us. And that's really important to know if you're struggling with a mental health issue. And a big part of my work is help people notice their feelings and that they're just feelings. Yeah, anyway, that's another story. Next thing. This is my favourite thing. Bring your real self to the real God and his people and stay connected. Bringing your real self to the real God. I like a 3-beat rhythm to this. I go stop, which means slow down. Notice what's happening for you. What am I feeling and thinking right now? How am I going? What's happening? And then turn towards God with all of it. Instead of, stop feeling that. I've got to sort myself out before I pray. No, rubbish. Best book on prayer out there at the moment. It's a new one called Where Prayer Becomes Real by Kyle Strobel. Really, really fantastic book on prayer. You can tell by the title. I'm going to dig it. So stop, notice what's happening for you, and then bring that, even your distractedness. You don't have to clean yourself up to go to God. He's done that for you already. Just turn up. Stop. Notice what is actually happening for me right now and turn towards the Lord with all of it. Hope that makes sense. Hope that's helpful. Yeah. That's a good thing to do when you're struggling with mental health issues, but it's actually a good thing to do if you're a human being as well. So next one, really there. Throw everything at it. Get the help that will help. Get a psychologist or a counsellor. Talk to your GP about whether medication's going to help. And really focus on the 5 pillars. Think my body is saying, hypoarousal is where you just got that, I can't make myself do anything. But the treatment for that is to move your body, right? When you least feel like doing something, it's probably the thing your body needs the most. All that kind of stuff. Try and get these 5 pillars going. Only you can make those happen. So I bang on about exercise all the time to my clients. It's how we're wired to function. I bang on about social contact, and that's the thing. Stay connected to God's people if you can, even if you just can't make yourself go to church because it's going to freak you out or there's too many wounds or something like that. Stay connected with a couple of people and say, listen, I give you permission to text me once a week, or do you know what I mean? And also, if you're walking alongside someone, just text them and say, no pressure, just letting you know I'm thinking about you. Here's a verse I like. But not, you've got to come to church if you're a good Christian. No, just love them because you love them, not because they've got to perform for you Christian-wise. Do you know what I mean? Try and help them stay connected. But also, if you are struggling yourself, try to make the effort to stay connected, even if it's just a couple of texts or something like that. Or could you pray for me? Or if you've got a small group saying, look, I'm not going to make it, but I'd love your prayers about this. And can someone ask me how I am in a week? You know what I mean? Just little things like that. All that stuff really helps. But having coffees and being a family is really important to try and stay connected. Next thing, and just learning to notice what your mind is doing. That's what psychologists are best at. We try to help you notice what your mind is doing and then separate out from it and go, that isn't actually my values, it's just my thoughts having a little go. I don't have to listen to them. I can turn down the volume on that. Oh, hello, thoughts. So you start to change your relationship with these thoughts and feelings. You can't delete thoughts and feelings. It's not like a file on your computer that you can kind of drag down and go, oh, that's gone now, I'm better. I have themes of thoughts and feelings that come up all the time, but now I can say, oh, hello, old thing. I know you, that I'm not good enough thing, or that, you're an imposter or whatever. Yeah, oh, hello, I know you. Feel free to come on the journey, but you can't have the steering wheel. Because my values and my worldview and me knowing the Lord's with me is going to have the steering wheel, even if my feelings and my thoughts are doing something different. So learning to notice what your mind is doing and make friends with it. Don't try and, go away, you stupid thought. You're like, oh, hello, well, just don't take it so seriously, if that makes sense. Got a little bit of therapy for free there. Yes, so they're the 5 tips. What have I got next? Q&A. How good am I? 20 to 12. Yes. Nailed it. Okay, now this lovely patient person at the front, were you asking that if somebody in COVID found their life was much better and they were much happier, is that a red flag? Well, it could be a red flag that something in their life before wasn't working. For example, they were doing too much. They're an introvert and they didn't know that they need time alone to recharge. Or it could be that they like this. I mean, there was a little bit of, when we all went back out of COVID, that a little bit of life became more complicated, right? There was something kind of simpler, and it was horrible, don't get me wrong. I cried, like I did not enjoy lockdown, don't get me wrong. But there was something simpler about it, and I had this list of 6 things I could do if I didn't know if I was feeling lost. And I think, okay, I'm going to go and do some painting now. I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to ring that person, or I'm going to, like, it just all became a bit simpler. And so it can't be a red flag. Or it may be that they are someone who is quite happy in their own company and they have struggled with social contact, and maybe they've got some social anxiety issues, or that they don't like, they've got to really cultivate the effort to be with other people. So of course lockdown was easier for them. I don't think it's necessarily an indicator of a mental health problem. Well, one is you have anxiety when you go to see people. As in, the threat of seeing someone means that you avoid it. I mean, to be classified as a social anxiety disorder, you actually just start not going to things, So it's not just the feelings that go with it, it's the function, the behaviours that they never go out. They stay home all the time. They don't want to see people, and the more their comfort zone gets smaller and smaller and smaller, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so that anxiety disorder is present when, so lots of introverts, you think, oh, I don't want to go to this party tonight, but I'm going to go because, I'm going to, it's sort of, introverts more a sign that you're going to feel a bit more tired by it, rather than I'm going to, I can't. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So luckily, introverts don't have a mental health problem, right? Nor are all extroverts narcissists. Lucky for me. Lucky for me, right. Okay. Is that helpful? Yeah, it kind of made sense? Yeah, okay. Yes. Any more questions, people? Yes. Nice and loud.
I've got too many questions, but I'm going to cut it down to maybe 2 or 3, and feel free not to.
Just one at a time. One at a time, yeah.
How do you overcome compassion fatigue when you're walking with someone along their journey?
Yeah. Well, so the question was, how do you overcome compassion fatigue when you're walking alongside someone in their journey? Firstly, it's to know what compassion fatigue is, so well done, and that is when you just get too exhausted and you're starting to run out of petrol about it. Notice the signs for yourself. Have self-knowledge and self-compassion before you start the journey. I mean, it's a bit late when you've fallen off the wagon, but you know what I mean? Like, try to be aware of self, of how much your capacity is. And be honest with others. And are you getting help? Are you getting support for you? Are you doing this as a team, or is it all up to you? That kind of thing. The other thing is there's some really helpful things to do, like, so that I have to learn in my work, and some of you who are counsellors or even in ministry, where you can learn to, if you're an over-empathiser, you're more likely to, she nods knowingly, if you're an over-empathiser, we've really got to watch ourselves. That's really interesting. I'm really learning a lot about this at the moment. There's a great book called Helping the Helper by Help for the Helper by Babette Rothschild, South African psychologist. It's very old, and some of the neuroscience is a little outdated, but the practical stuff is all absolutely bang on. She's great. But she talks about, this sense of holding on to ourselves when we're with others. So you can actually sort of stop and notice, what's my posture doing right now? What's my heart rate like right now? Do I need to sort of ground myself in the present moment with this other person? And this is a really important one. This is something my psychologist and one of my supervisors has really honoured me about all the time, really practicing it every day. is when I'm hearing the story or they're sharing their distress, can I be present with them by noticing what their hair's doing, what their facial expression is doing, without playing in my own head the video of what they're talking about? I don't know if that makes sense. It's really helpful so that I can be present with them very intently by noticing what's happening to the little wrinkles around their eyes and doing present moment, being present stuff, noticing the body, but noticing my own body. What's my posture? Am I going, am I leaning forward like that? Or am I kind of grounded, erect? Are my feet pushed into the floor? I've got to have a chair that's because I'm only little, right? So I have to have a chair that where I can touch the ground. Really, I can ground myself in the place. So there's an awareness when you're in the situation that if you're an overemphasizer, you need to learn how to hold on to yourself and not feel their feelings. Practice not feeling their feelings for them. There's a line that a therapist gave me once that I find very helpful, and I say, "I'm so sorry to hear that. That sounds really hard. I'm so sorry to hear that. That sounds really hard." And somehow I find that really helpful because I'm saying, I'm sorry to hear that, but it's not happening to me. Yeah, I've held on to myself somehow. It sounds so hard. Oh my gosh. Or like, rather than, that's terrible. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's helpful, but that's what I find helpful about. And that when you have compassion fatigue, you just need to say, okay, I'm done. It's time for me to have a little break. I'm not going to be able to do our weekly catch-ups for about 6 weeks. Could you find someone else, or would you like me to help you find someone else? That kind of thing, yeah. But there's some things you can do to sort of hold on to yourself. But also the stuff I talked before about the pincher movement, being clear on what you will and won't do. Sometimes we overdo because we're trying to fix our anxiety by trying to walk with them. Oh, make this better. That's going to lead to compassion fatigue. You know what I mean? We don't have the capacity. That's not who we are. We're not doing their feelings for them. Yeah, makes sense. But hopefully you seem tuned into what I'm saying. It's good. Okay. Did anyone else have any other questions? Because she's got 27, so. Yes?
So if someone has something that makes it inherently more difficult to seek help, what are some initial things that are helpful to enable them to seek help?
Notice, okay, the question was, if somebody has something that makes it difficult for them to seek help, what are some things you can do? What are some things they can do to make seeking help easier? What's something they can do to make seeking help easier?
I could provide an example if that would.
Well, I think what I would do is I'd say I'd be really interested in what are the things that you think, this is a great question, by the way, what are the things that you think might be stopping you seeking help? So I had this terrible experience at the dentist, whatever it is I need help about, right? And I'm frightened of it. Oh, that's really interesting. So you're frightened of seeing the GP because of something that happened before, and sort of unearthing for them what is going on. Yep. Or say to them, why don't you write down the things, or for them, so if it's them, I'd say, what do you think are the barriers? And what's one small step you could take to overcome that barrier? Rather than, here, let me drive you. Do you mean? It's their gig. Yep.
For instance, would be like, okay, what should I be doing myself right now to be better at seeking help?
Yeah.
So just identifying barriers and then finding active ways to.
Yeah. Identify the barriers and say, well, I don't know what help I need. I feel terrible, but I don't know who can help me. Well, go to your GP. Your GP is your first port of call. Like, what things might be stopping you? Maybe I don't have a GP. I see that all the time. What? You don't have a GP? Well, get a GP. And they will help you work out what's the best help. They're good at that.
I guess it's kind of like what I'm getting at is, for instance, I've recently been exploring whether I have ADD, and I hate admit, I hate admit.
It's because you have ADD. I do too. So I'm with you. I am a fellow. I don't quite tip over into the clinical level, but I understand. Yeah. You go to your GP, say, I'd like to talk to someone about it. Yep.
I know, but I've made appointments, but making appointments and making follow-up appointments is really difficult.
Well, you have to break it up into small steps. Break it up, and if each step is more than so 5 is really difficult, 0 is easy peasy. If break it up into smaller steps. I need to find the phone number of the psychologist they gave me. Or I need to ring them again and say, what was the number of that psychiatrist who does assessments? Do you know what I mean? Break it up into small steps. And if each step is under 3, you can do it, no worries. If it's over 3, the step's too big, you need to break that up into smaller steps. Break it up into small steps. Rather than, I've got a whole seminar on procrastination. You can get me back to do that one. It's because I'm an expert at it. I feel your pain. I feel your pain. But then, no, I'm going to break it into small steps. But also, I think as a Christian, you can say, Lord, can you do this with me? Can you strengthen me to do this? I need your help to do this. But then break it up into really tiny steps. Okay, I'm going to find my phone. I'm going to write down the number that I need to ring. I'm going to call and say, what's the process? And then when there's a form to fill in, say, okay, I'm going to make a nice cup of tea and there's going to be some chocolate. When I filled it in, I'm going to allow to eat. And I'm going to make it rewards, and I'm going to go to a cafe and fill in the form so that it's a nice experience. Do you know what I mean? Like there's all sorts of things. Yeah, all sorts of things you can do. Really good question. Yeah, yep. Hope that was helpful anyway. Give it a try. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much for speaking today. It's very encouraging.
No worries.
I just had a question about like navigating like church authority specifically. If like someone in authority is open about having like a mental health diagnosis or struggle, like unfortunately, I feel like I've seen that people seem to think that compromises their legitimacy or authority. Just like theologically, how do we kind of like combat that and educate people that that's not the case? Does that make sense?
Do you mean, so the question was, if someone in authority in the church structures, or someone who's a full-time paid minister, or someone who's sort of, or got a pastoral role or something like that, if they're honest about their mental health difficulties, somehow they get a bit stigmatised or seen as less than, yeah. Well, I think you probably already know what I think about that. Like get your theology straight, people. Yeah. It may make them better at it. Because they're going to be the people that the people who are struggling will go to. Yeah. But I have another seminar on mental health when you're in ministry as well, so we've got to look after ourselves and all that kind of stuff. But to be able to, if somebody says, oh, I'm not going to them, and look, it's a cultural thing as well. Back when I started as a psychologist, mental health was so stigmatised, but because of Beyond Blue and massive amounts of money that the government's put into kind of destigmatising mental health issues, now everyone's got one and all that kind of stuff. But that's not the case in mainland China. That is not the case. I remember talking to Dan, who some of you know, and he was walking alongside a young student who just said, I'm not sleeping, I'm not enjoying anything, I'm having these really dark thoughts. He said, I think you've got depression. And the student said, we don't have that in China. And I was just like, okay, so what level of understanding and stigma and stuff is associated with this? Is there shame attached to it? And if there's shame attached to it, you can't fix that, but you can say, look, it's tricky, isn't it? But I think we all struggle with the mental health at some point in our lives. Like most of us, something like 60% of us or something, will have some kind of wrestle with it at some point in our life. And so, we might learn from this or, whatever. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's helpful to like identify why someone would respond negatively.
Yes. Yeah, and it could be a shame thing. That's a very deep thing. You're not going to fix that. Yeah. But you see, the being real, bringing your real self to your real God. I mean, you've got to be wise, right? I'm not going to, if I'm the minister of a congregation or I'm standing up in the front of my whole church, I'm not going to sort of reveal things that are not safe for me to reveal. I'm not going to kind of try and, be inappropriate. But if I do share vulnerabilities, like, one of the guys at our church, he's not there now, but he said, oh, look, I've been really struggling with anxiety and I went for 6 sessions to this psychologist and it really helped me and it was so relevant to the passage that he was preaching. And after that, people were like, that's so great. I'm so relieved. It's not just me. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of helpful. It can be very helpful to bring our real selves to God and our real selves to the congregation. Because this is where intimacy happens, is when you bring your real self in your relationships rather than this kind of avatar of yourself that is kind of got it all together or doesn't struggle with mental health issues. Yeah. I hope that's helped you, answered your question. Yeah. Bring our real selves with each other Jesus turns up when you do that, I reckon. It's wonderful. Yeah. And, there's lots of advice about how to love, right? 1 Corinthians 13, the most magnificent list, not insisting on your own way, listening, not being forceful, all those beautiful things, patient, kind, gentle. Yep. That was so good. I'm going to get you to say it again.
I said, do you have any exercises or prayers or suggestions for how to release rather than taking on and taking in someone else's burden in the context of over-empathy?
No, but I will soon, because that is such a good idea. Yeah. Another thing I do is I'm really into prayer retreats, and I'm running one in Wagga for anyone that's interested. It's a friend from Sydney and me from Melbourne. We're running this prayer retreat in Wagga in November. If anyone is interested, I can send you stuff. But what I'm developing is a bunch of prayer tools, and it would be wonderful to have a prayer tool. I'm going to ask you, what sort of elements do you think it might have in it that perhaps came out of today? Like, what sort of elements do you think might have in it? Like, I think it might, what do you think? Oh, love this stuff. So the question is, what's the relationship between ego and over-empathy? Yeah. And in the work of sort of spiritual formation and spiritual disciplines and spiritual direction, which is something I'm really interested in, we talk about the ego and the false self, which is the avatar I was talking about, where we present to our Christian community and even to God sometimes this sort of got it together kind of person. So what's the role of that with over-empathy? I think over-functioning is when you just start doing things for everyone else, and that could be related that you're trying to look like you're being amazing, if that makes sense. So I'm going to do this because then people will notice what a wonderful servant I am and how humble and amazing I am, right? So if you've got your eye, and I've struggled with this a lot, if you've got your eye to the performance and to things being performative, then perhaps your over-functioning can be. Over-empathy is no, you actually feel sad for them. So it's a subtle difference, but I think over-functioning is when you're doing all this stuff, but you actually are doing it because you want to feel better about you, or you want people to see. Like, Jesus spoke very directly about this false self, didn't he? Don't do it like the Pharisees. Don't parade in front of people, saying, giving your alms, making sure everyone's seeing how much you're putting in. Do it all in secret because you haven't. Don't pray like, oh Lord, I'm amazing. Don't pray like that. Pray secret because that's much cooler. It's much more. God's much more interested in that. He turns up. Over-empathy can be because you're trying to manage your own anxiety, but also it can be the downside of a great gift. To be empathetic is a gift. It's a wonderful thing to be able to be with people, and to feel, to not just be interesting, but we need empathy in our relationships, and for some people it's a lot harder than others. For people on the spectrum, one of their gifts is that they don't get all caught up in the feelings of others. But for those of us that aren't like that, our gift is that we can understand and feel some things, but we've got to have some boundaries around that so that we don't start fusing with other people and getting confused with what's our job and what's not. Yeah. Has that helped? Has that answered your question? Yeah. A little bit? Yeah. 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 Yes, that's right. So something to have helpful to have something. So the sort of response was, it's really helpful to have Bible verses, perhaps written down, even stuck on the fridge or stuck in, so on cards. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, some cards. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. To be a voice outside your own head telling you how God feels about you rather than your feelings telling you what God's having about you. That's a great idea. It's kind of like Christian CBT. Yes. That's right. Yes, well, this probably needs to be the last. We'll have two more. Okay? Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you two, do you want to go first? Pink shirt? Yeah.
This is not so much about, I suppose, over empathy, but do you think that there's a line between, I forgot the right word is, but kind of letting someone sit in their mental health problem space too long and trying to go, no, you should be aiming to feel joy, you should be aiming to feel love and better. I think I actually struggle with empathy rather than
Yes,
over
yes.
empathy.
And both have got their strengths and weaknesses, right? Yes, yes.
Empathy because my line of work as well. But
Which is? Oh, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Yeah.
I can tell you after.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Sorry.
Like a trigger thing.
Okay.
But I suppose, can we sit with a friend or someone we work with too much in their mental health problem? And can you start identifying the line in which you should be trying to push them a little bit more to feeling seen, liked, feeling Christ's joy?
Yeah, yeah. Yes. Can I give an example? I was leading music at church once. I had this great vicar, the pastor was wonderful, and he came, and in between songs, right, like there was some other stuff. He goes, Nicky, this person's having a mental health episode at the back. I think she's just having fun with everyone paying attention. Can we do something about it? Do you know what I mean? So I went down the back and walked in, and there's all these people praying for her, and she was writhing around and groaning. And I went, hey, Jeanette, how are you? Sorry, I shouldn't have used her name. Jane. Hey, Jane. No, Jeanette. No, we'll pretend her name's Jeanette. How are you going? We love you, right? You're our sister in Christ. She goes, yeah, I know. Have you taken your pills today? No. Oh, where are they? In my handbag. Okay, let's get your handbag. Where's your handbag? Someone went and got the handbag, took the pills. Right. Do you know what I mean? So there was this sense in which they were enabling the performance, that which is a bit different. But also, if someone's really digging a hole deeper and deeper into depression and they're not getting help for it, there is a line of, listen, where you become the crack record. Look, I really think that it would be great if you got some help for this because people can help you with this. At the same time, I'm so sorry to hear that you're going through this. It sounds really hard. Yeah. But that encouraging people and being a bridge to people getting help is important, but it's not your job. Your job is to have a voice and walk alongside. It's not to do the fixing, or it's their job to move themselves forward. And sometimes it's very hard to watch people who won't help themselves, but you have to be really clear on what your job is and what it isn't. Does that assist? Yes. Does that answer your question? Yes. Yeah, yeah. Because I think it's helpful just to notice there is a line where you might be enabling or paying attention and giving people good stuff, and so it keeps it going. Do you know what I mean? There could be a pattern developing where you're enabling, or where they're loving the attention of their distress and stuff like that. That happens too. And sort of to have the nous to know, well, actually, I think you need to take some responsibility for this as well. Or not necessarily say it like that, but really concerned for you. I reckon some help would help. Yeah. Yep. There was this one here. Yes. Yeah, if they don't let you in. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Someone you're very close to. Yeah, yeah. I think, again, to be clear, to let them know that you care about them. Here are some phone numbers. Do you know what I mean? And that I really think you should go to the GP about this, and I'm happy to take you. But I understand it's I feel so much for you that you're feeling so bad. I understand that this is hard, but I can't force you to do this, but I'm really concerned about you. I think, and here's some numbers. Can I make the calls for you, or do you want to do it? But this is for you. You can't control them. You can't control them. Yes, you can pray, but you can also be a voice. You can say, I'm really concerned for you, and I think you need, I would really appreciate if you got this help. Can we go to the GP? If they're a child who's under, say, 15, you can alert the school and say, I'm really concerned this person's mental health's not good, and the school they have services that can assist. When they're a child, it's a bit different because you have duty of care as a parent. And to say, no, and you can even go to the GP if they won't and say, okay, my kid's doing this, this and this. I think they're at risk. Can you guide me on what to do next? And the GP can ring the kid and say, hey, this is what can help. Yeah. I've worked with many reluctant teenagers and they actually like it when someone listens to them. They actually want someone to listen to them. But not, you go get fixed. This is not my, but it's more, I'm really concerned for you. I care about you a lot. I think there's more help. Yeah, but, it's very hard. It is very hard if they put the boundaries up and you can't control it. You can keep having a voice and you try to be gentle and respectful of their agency and their ability to make things happen. But you can keep saying sharing your concern and that you think this would be helpful. And maybe the 6th time you tell them, they might, okay, yeah, Mum, you can call if it's a child or if it's a partner, or a sister or whatever, a family member. And you can make clear how you're feeling about it and what you think would be helpful to do, but you can't make them do it. But if you have safety concerns, the CAT team are really great because they can advise you. My sister has said she's going to end it, and she's so depressed, she's not getting out of bed and nothing's happening, but she refuses to go and get help for it. Or I think, do you have any suggestions for me? They can advise you on what to do as well. Yeah, particularly if there's risk involved. Yeah, we better finish. We've gone over time. Thank you for coming, and I hope that was helpful. Would you like to finish by praying? That would be great. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nicky, for your time. It was very challenging, educating and refreshing. Lots of practical things that we've all learnt and heard about. I just want to remind everyone that conversations don't end here, and I really encourage you to ask after this formality or at church tomorrow, and just in life to ask each other what's something you learnt, what's something you were challenged by, what's something that struck you, and continue these conversations and be open about it. One thing that stood out to me is having a good and solid theology of suffering. So before I pray, I'm just going to end with Romans 8:38. For I am sure that neither death nor life, nor angels nor rulers, nor things present nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen. And how great it is that we have Jesus in our lives, that he can be our refuge in times of suffering. So let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for this morning. We thank you for the ways that you have blessed us through Nicky, through the gifts that you have given her, through the knowledge that you have blessed her with and cultivated over many years in her professional life and personal life as well. We pray that you would continue to help us to have a solid and good theology of suffering, that you would help us to be understanding of others who are going through mental health problems, and also grow to be caring and loving sisters who walk alongside those who are struggling as well. God, thank you that you never leave us and that you promise to be with us till the end, and maybe believe that strongly and really live by that truth. God, thank you so much for today, and I pray that you would keep us safe and keep us pursuing you in every aspect of our life for the rest of today and for the week coming ahead. In your name, amen. Amen. So that closes the formalities of today. There's still a lot of food, and I'm sure Sarah and Monique would really appreciate leftovers. So there's leftover containers. Please feel free to grab anything you would like. And we'll be sticking around for a bit, so feel free to continue chatting, or if you need to head off, that's totally fine. So thank you everyone.